I think I look at love really practically now, and somehow it's my favorite version of it. I think because I didn't really have an example of what a solid relationship looked like in my developmental years, it was movies. It was like fairy tales. It was pop culture. And I learned the hard way. And I learned the things that I learned the things that I contribute to a relationship that I was like, okay, I'm a great partner in these ways. And then I learned the things that I was like, KB, you are in your 20s, like, you gotta get it together. I always say I grew up on a farm in East Tennessee, and my first concert was Britney Spears. And that's my music in a nutshell. It really is. I mean, there's like the kind of the roots of, you know, living and growing up in East Tennessee, but then, yeah, like my dad makes fun of me. He says that I used to go around the house and I would just sound like the Grudge because I would be working on my Britney growl. Oh, baby, baby. And I would just do that all the time. But that's kind of like the truth to me, is being able to play and feel so creatively free. And I've always done that. Like, even when I go back and listen to the original Love Me Like You Mean It, my first single, like I hear that sensibility to want to not be boxed in. Love me like you mean it. But specifically, Rolling Up the Welcome Mat and Patterns, I just feel like I was like, I'm a songwriter. I believe I'm a country artist. I don't need to seek that approval. Like, I believe that about myself. And that has been so liberating and fulfilling.
It's 7 a.m. and I'm on a mountain with a view. I'm the only one alone at a table meant for two.
Ironically, I started writing songs when my parents got divorced. That was the catalyst. I was 12, and I was like, that was the age I was getting tall, boys were getting cute. I was like, what is going on? And then my family was, and it wasn't just my parents, it was like a whole family divide. And I just fell in love with songwriting. It became truly like the safest thing in my life. But then it becomes your job. And no one talks about this because it's not sexy, but the truth is, like, when it becomes your job, you start to think about more than just writing songs about your life. You do think about, like, where is this gonna fit? Is this gonna move the needle? Is this gonna check these boxes? And it doesn't make it less honest, but it definitely makes it with different intentions, I guess. And I think that with Welcome Mat, it was just that full circle. I was going through what my parents went through, and I went back to writing songs simply because I had to. I didn't care where it fit. I didn't care if it was too pop. I didn't care if it rhymed. I didn't care if it was 1 minute or 6. Like, I was just like, I have to get it out of me and put it somewhere for safekeeping. And the intention was pure again.
Baby, were you blindsided? Or were you just blind?
I never intended on making an EP. I really didn't. The first song I wrote was Blindsided, and that was very kind of impulsive, I guess. But I had just put out another record, you know? So I was fully on tour, the Heart First tour. I had just put out Subject to Change, which was like my big commercial country record. And then as that was going out into the world, my life was changing. I was writing about it and responding to it and reacting to it. And it wasn't until I wrote Penthouse, I guess, that I was like, oh, there's different layers to this. And I'm like a sad song girly forever and ever, whether I'm writing it or listening to it. So I've heard a lot of breakup records. But I knew that I felt like we were able to really articulate some sides that I hadn't heard before.
We were playing home in a penthouse, baby.
So my intention putting it out, it was really just to show other sides of heartbreak, to have more narrative around, especially for women, around life changes and divorce. But I will say, being able to put out a record like Rolling Up the Welcome Mat, you know, in the 3 or 4 years before that, Carly put out 29, Casey put out Star-Crossed. It was not so taboo to be a woman talking about it. And I credit that to artists like those incredible women that are friends of mine that were brave enough to do it. So I felt brave enough to do it. And the next one, and the next one, you know?
I'm scared of looking stupid. Said I'm ready now, I gotta prove it.
I remember when Chase and I were first talking, I hadn't put out Welcome Mat yet, and it was about to come out, and I remember he was on a drive to his mom's house, and I just said, hey, I've gone through this thing, and you're gonna ask about it, and I'm gonna put this out, so here's a good entry point, here's the EP, and let's talk about this, let's just see how this feels. And he was and has been nothing but so supportive of that level of honesty that I found and reconnected with making that EP, and would never ask me to be anything else. I think being with another creative, we both understand each other's process, and just like I would never ask him to not take a role that he feels inspired by because of anything, he would never ask me to round the edges on my songwriting, and I think that's one of the things I appreciate the most about him. I think there's a really interesting thing when you get into a certain season of your relationship where some of the glitter wears off and you're starting to get really comfortable, right? And you're having like more of the harder conversations. You're digging your heels in a bit more. And I think within that phase of a relationship, when you get that footing, you kind of become a mirror for each other. He helps me see the best things about myself, and he celebrates those with me, and vice versa. But we also show each other the things that we want to get better at, that we want to be better for, we want to make more time for, especially, within a relationship. And I talk about this on Patterns a lot because this is the first time I've ever been challenged in a relationship in this way. As soon as I feel something going differently than I thought it would, I will be like, gotta go. And it's not because I want to, it's because I'm so scared of getting hurt, so I'll leave before I get left. I have a partner that is a mirror for me, and he challenged me quickly on that one, and thank God. But those are the kind of things that I think I've found in this relationship and this season of love that I had never really known before, and I feel very, very grateful. Never knew I'd have around you. Now, my version of love that I have found, it's steady and it's human and we work on it. Like, that to me, honestly, is the sexiest thing. Like, hey, you wanna go to therapy? Let's go to therapy. Like, being so down with your person to like put in the work for each other and individually, like that is hot because that it's funny, earlier this year, Chase and I were like, what are our goals like as a team for the year? And we said we wanna make each other hotter, funnier, and more ambitious. And I loved that. Like, I think about that all the time because I think that is a healthy relationship where you're like, I want you to be the best version of yourself for us, but also for you, for your job, for like your goals, your family, all the things, and vice versa. And man, the place that we've been able to get to with our goals, it's been awesome. It's been really, it's a very new kind of love for me, and thank God.
Do you still believe in marriage? Is that something that's still important to you?
I do. I definitely do. I've learned so much, and I've grown up a lot, and I love love, and I think different people have different goals and what it can look like, and I don't know what the future holds, but I value partnership very heavily, and I'm open, but who knows?
Always hanging by a thread. I got patterns.
Patterns is fully, I call it a love letter to self-assessment because I was getting into my 30s and so many people had told me, they're like, all right, Kels, especially for women, there's this thing that happens, especially if you're a chronic people pleaser, obviously I am, where you start really shifting where you're finding that approval. And it stops being so outward and you really start to kind of trust yourself and find it. And it really slowly started happening. My Saturn return was a Saturn return. And so I think that was part of the tail end of it, of like shedding that skin. And that's what you hear from Patterns. It's me entering into my 30s going, okay, lots of life I've lived. What have I learned about myself? What do I still wanna continue to kind of shake out of and grow out of and evolve out of? What I want to celebrate about myself and my relationships, and then the people closest to me. Like, I also want to hold that mirror up for both of us. But yeah, it's like a love letter to turning 30. It's always been at the top of my bucket list to tour arenas. I think because I was so impressionable when I was a kid and I went and saw those shows at Thompson Bowling Arena in Knoxville. Like, there was something about those years and that age where that's just the room I wanted to play.
It's a Saturday night, first Saturday of the tour. I'm stoked. Sold out. Sold the hell out.
But, you know, as I got into country music and I started putting out my first record and doing radio tour and all that stuff, I realized that historically there's not a lot of women in our genre that have made that jump to arenas. And so I knew, A, it would take a lot of work if I ever could make the jump, and B, if I ever made the jump to arenas, I had to do it right because I couldn't fail, not just for myself and the people that I work with, but I wanted to contribute to the history of women in country music. And I think the last few years have been so transformative in a lot of ways. And I just have this mentality right now of if not now, then when? You know, like, just jump. And every time I've done that in my life the last few years, something's caught me. And so thank God right now, jumping to arenas has been the right choice.
Baby, baby, look at me now. Oh, no, just a couple good friends. Untied, a couple loose ends.
Creating that show and being able to have this big production and create this atmosphere to have people step into for an hour and a half, where, you know, I structured the show so it feels like there are moments where you just want to like grab your best friend next to you and just like jump up and down, and then moments where we can all be emotional and soft together and superhuman. It's just been like the best experience of my career.
Baby, baby, look at you now.
The audacity that I had at 15 to be like, Mom, we have to move to Nashville, it's a knowingness. It's like a gut thing. And I don't think I ever knew what it would look like and the scope of what it could grow to, but I knew that I would figure out a way to make music my living in whatever capacity. I knew that I was not going to give up on that dream. And then I think as I've been like slowly chipping away at my bucket list, it grows, you know, and then you're like, what else can I do? Like, how much farther can I push this? And that's a really fun question to be able to ask yourself, you know, like, okay, I got a #1. Can I get 2? Okay, I did a collab in country music. Can I do a collab in another genre? Okay, I got an ACM. Can I get a Grammy? Like, all those things, like, it's been really fun to challenge myself, and I still have a million more things that I'm working towards all the time.
And sitting in for Kelly Clarkson during the battles, Kelsea Ballerini.
I was really nervous to join The Voice, if I'm honest. The journey kind of happened where Kelly Clarkson got sick a couple years ago, called me to fill in for her for the battle rounds. And I mean, I didn't even have time to like overthink it. I was in the chair the next day, super terrified, did it. And by the end of that, I have a group chat with all my best girlfriends, and I texted them and I said, guys, I really think I want this job one day. And so when Blake retired his seat, the producers came to Nashville, this is a couple years ago, and they were meeting with several country artists. That's all I knew. I was one of them. So we had dinner, and I remember at the end of this dinner, and I don't even know where this audacity came from, I leaned across the table and I said, hey, I'm sure that you're meeting with like superstars and people that have a way bigger track record than me, but I want you to know that I really want this and I can do it. I will show up and I will do this job. And I didn't get it for the next season, and I remember being like, oh, dang it. But then I got to tour Welcome Mat, and then it was divine timing when it was time. And it didn't mean that I wasn't nervous, but I was definitely more equipped. I was definitely more equipped and had way more experience under my belt to be able to bring to the artists. And yeah, being in a seat next to people that I grew up on, more or less. Like, Songs About Jane, Maroon 5 is one of my favorite records of all time. I've covered John Legend a million times. I went and saw Michael Bublé at Bridgestone in Nashville. Like, I'm a fan of these guys. And they've been around longer than me. Like, they're international superstars, you know? And so I was sitting in the seat the first day and I was like, how am I gonna fight these guys? But honestly, then people like Angie Ray, who sang Penthouse, like, that happened, I think, day 1 of Blinds. And I immediately was like, oh, I belong here. I'm safe here. Like, I have a place here. And that performance early on really helped me kind of get my bearings.
We played the part 5 nights, but we were never
I wanted the job because a couple years before that, I was having like an end of year Christmas dinner with my manager. I looked at him and I said, I need you to be really honest with me. What's my blind spot? What do I need to work on? What's my weakness? And he said, Kelsey, you need to stop acting like you're new here. Because I think for so long I was like, I'm a new artist. And I would have my shoulders kind of tucked when I would be in the room with my peers. And it was really good advice for me, and really like, it proposed a real challenge for me to be able to kind of own the career that I've gotten to have so far and find like validity, truly find that validity in the work that I've gotten to do and the success that I've had. And I think even if I heard myself say that 5 years ago, it would have given me the ick majorly, but I do think there's a really important lesson for women that we have to learn to own our success and celebrate ourselves. And that was the first part of that journey for me. And I knew that if I ever got to be in the seat on The Voice, it would really help me step into the fact that I have been around for 10 years and I have had ebbs and flows and hits and flops and literally everything in between. And I've learned from that. And I would like to share that knowledge.
I love John and I love Michael and I love Adam, but they're not Kelsey. And that's how I, like, you know what I mean?
And they're not.
Wow.
I knew John from when I filled in for Kelly. And I had never met Michael and I never met Adam. And so the night before we started filming, we all got together for dinner. It was us and the producers. And immediately, there was just like this brotherly energy. And they were talking about their families and their kids and their wives and like their intention behind wanting to be a coach. And I just felt safe immediately. Yeah, and then we have this group chat, and there's not a day that we leave set where someone doesn't hit it and say, hey, great job today. Hey, great show today. Hey, great artist that you got today. There's such an encouragement there. And I was saying that in front of them a couple months ago, and Adam was like, I don't think I've ever been on a group chat while I've been a coach before. Like, this is new. And that made me feel really good that we feel comfortable, and we like to celebrate each other.
You mentioned that one of your toxic traits is that you still read the comments.
I do.
Yikes.
I know. I got rid of Twitter a long time ago. That was helpful. Twitter kicked my ass. So Twitter's been gone for a long time. She's out. I discovered Reddit, but it was kind of when my life was a bit chaotic. Then I was like, we need to have some boundaries. So that's no longer. I really just kind of keep up with TikTok and Instagram, and even that feels like too much. But I'm not sure how to not, because I'm a people pleaser, and I like the feedback. My therapist told me a while ago, she said, Kelsey, you need to care more about less. And I was like, you're so right. And so, yeah, I think although I still care about that feedback, I don't give it the gravity that I used to. I think I've really tried to prioritize my life and what I put the most stock in, especially when it comes to opinions and feedback and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it still affects me, but it doesn't like gut me like it used to. I have a really lovely relationship with therapy, which even that took me a long time, because the 2 times that I had experienced therapy as a kid, one was court-ordered, from my parents getting divorced, and one was also mandatory because of a school shooting that I was in the room for. And I think because those were 2 such heavy and life-changing and tragic experiences, and it wasn't my decision to go to therapy, I had a really bad taste in my mouth. But I think it was like 24, 25, where I was like, oh, yeah, okay, all of a sudden I'm like an adult and I'm gone from home all the time. My life looks different than some of my friends, and I probably need help to not implode. And so I made the choice to go to therapy then, and I feel like it's been a game changer for me personally. I think I used to be my full identity was in, what am I doing? Does it look good? Is this impressive? Am I like holding my space against my peers? All that kind of stuff. And now I really just wanna make music that I'm really proud of. I really want to love my real life. I would like to think that I always tried to do that, but the way that I've shifted the last couple of years to become more balanced, and I'm really just protective of it now. I put a lot more stock in it and a lot more work into it, whether it be my relationship or just like my friendships and my family and my dogs and all that stuff. I value that time. And I think that the more that I've poured into that, the better artist I've become. And so that's my biggest goal, truly. I would not tell my younger self a damn thing, truly, because I think if I would have known so much about what's happened in my life since I left Knoxville at 15, or I mean, since 25 even, like, I think I would have been like scared of some of my life changes and maybe kind of just been like, how do we get there? I think not knowing how my journey was going to play out the last 10 years is probably the greatest gift I've ever been given. Yeah, I feel steady. I think like mentally, physically, career-wise for sure, like heart-wise for sure. I think I just had to shed some skin and make some tough choices for my life. And know that although things would be difficult for moments, it would make things so much better in the long run. I think it's age. I think it's running towards things that scare you. I think it's standing up for things you believe in and kind of doing it all unabashedly. I think that that's really been the biggest change in my life the last 3 years, is just kind of going, rip the Band-Aid, let's go. And yeah, I think that's what I credit being happy and steady to.